Welcome, everybody, to the presentation today on the benefits of EXCiPACT certification. We're so glad that you're here to join us today. The people speaking, the presenters today, will be John Golick, who has been with SGS for quite some time. He has over 33 years of quality and project management experience, 27 years of leadership experience in pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, personal care, food, and the medical device industry. Also joining us is the senior advisor from EXCiPACT, Ian Moore, who was the project leader for the development and delivery of the EXCiPACT certification scheme to begin with. And he stood as the first president and also the chair of EFSI, which is the European Federation of Cosmetic Ingredients GMP Committee, which oversees EFSI GMP guidelines and standards for cosmetic ingredients. So we're excited to have him today. SGS in brief, a lot of people ask, who are you? Many people know us, but still I continue to meet many people who don't. So SGS is the #1 world leader for the TIC industry. We've got almost 100,000 employees around the world with 2,600 offices, and we focus on 7 industries. The company was founded in 1878, and by the mid-century, 20th century, we diversified into inspection, testing, and verification. By 1981, we were listed on the Swiss Stock Exchange, and today we have over more than 140 years of business. And we offer, in our business assurance division, certification that can also include pre-audits and gap analysis prior to the certification. It can include training. A lot of people like to combine training and a pre-audit together before they go through the certification process. We do offer customized audits. A lot of times companies will seek to validate a new vendor or do a surveillance audit to make sure a vendor is continuing to comply with all the regulations for their products. And we also offer at-cause audits. Sometimes people receive a letter from the FDA and they become very keenly interested in an audit. We do also offer technical consulting. So if you have a project and you want to expand the breadth and depth of your knowledge, please consider SGS. I think what makes a difference with SGS is really we have both global and local experts. So if many companies have offices here in North America, but they also have offices around the world as well. And when you're doing a multi-site certification, you'll be happy to know that we have partners all around the world within SGS who can maintain the continuity of your audits. So we have the industry expertise, we've got the global network, and the quality of service to pull your project through. Anyway, I'm just going to kick it over to Ian, and Ian, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that great introduction, John, and I hope everyone can hear me clearly. So some questions to start with. Please click a button on the screen. Does your company have a vendor approval process? The answers are yes, no, or I don't know. So let's give that a few seconds, and you can please make your entries. I think if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, of course, then you have to have something in place to qualify all your suppliers. And EXCiPACT certification is absolutely central to this process. So I can see that we've got a good number of people that have answered the question. Thank you very much for doing that. And I'll close the poll at this stage, and then we'll have a look at the answers. So yeah, 100% people, congratulations. Yeah, we've all passed that one. Have a vendor approval process. That's brilliant to know. And that's really important, of course, and it's a fundamental GMP. But does your company now have a vendor approval process include quality audits? Do you go out and audit your suppliers? So again, second question, please, if you'd like to provide your answers. This is one of the bases for actually, setting up EXCiPACT. One of the prime functions for it was to help manage your audit resources correctly and not to overburden both suppliers and pharmaceutical product manufacturers. So great. I'll just stop that one now, and we'll take a pause and see. Yep. So, well, about 3/4 of people said yes, they do have a quality audit process, and they do go out and visit their vendors. About 1/4 of people said that they weren't aware of this, and that's fine. I mean, if you're not intimately involved in vendor qualification, it might not be clear to you that what's been going on there. And for this phase, just one final question, if I may. Perhaps, of those that you do know, do you already use EXCiPACT certification, or would you like to use or could you see yourselves using EXCiPACT certification audit reports to support a risk-based vendor certification program? So again, if you'd like to click yes, no, or not sure, that would be great, and we can take a pulse on where attendees today are at with vendor audits of excipient suppliers. Again, it's a main thrust for why we created EXCiPACT in the beginning. How do we make sure that you can use EXCiPACT certification? And I'll be explaining some of that later in the presentation. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your replies there. Let's get some of the answers here. And it's a bit of a mixture. Just under 50% of you are saying yes, you can see your company using it, or you're already doing it. About a sixth of you have said no. You don't see that happening. Maybe what you learned today from the presentation will help you reevaluate that and see if that decision can be reviewed. And around half of you were saying not sure. So thanks very much for that pulse survey and providing your answers there. I'll carry on then with the rest of my presentation. So just to recap, just to mention what excipients are. The FDA defines excipients as any ingredient or substance intentionally added to a drug product. It's not part of the active substance, so it doesn't have the therapeutic benefit, but it's often there as a necessity to ensure that the therapeutic substance can be delivered pharmacologically to the patient. I prefer IPEC, the International Pharmaceutical Excipients Council definition, substances other than the drug substance, which have been appropriately evaluated for safety and are intentionally included in a drug delivery system. So keywords there, of course, are safety, prior evaluation, and intentionally added. And it follows quite obviously then that excipients have to be manufactured and distributed in accordance with not only good manufacturing practices, but also good distribution practices. So who and what is EXCiPACT? Well, EXCiPACT is first and foremost an independent not-for-profit organization legally registered in Belgium as an ASBL, and that's French for Association Sans But Lucrative. Apologies if you're French, because my French pronunciation would be terrible, of course. But basically it means that if we do make a surplus on our activities, we're not allowed to distribute that back to our members. We have to use it to progress the purpose of EXCiPACT, which is to deliver the certification program across the world. And we're also made up of 7 full members currently, and they can only be associations. So individual companies and individual people can't be members of EXCiPACT, and that avoids any undue influence from any one individual or company. And the members at the moment are FECC, European Association of Chemical Distributors, IPEC members in America, China, India, and Europe, and in the UK, the Pharmaceutical Quality Group. And we also have a member in China, SPPEA, who look after packaging and pharmaceutical excipients in that country. And only those full members have voting rights and can nominate persons to serve on the management body which governs EXCiPACT. So we're trying to be as independent as we can be. What is EXCiPACT certification? Well, it's an entirely independent process, as I just explained. It's voluntary. It's up to excipient suppliers whether they wish to adopt it or not. It covers both good manufacturing practices, good distribution practices, and that comes in 2 flavors now. And it covers pharmaceutical excipient suppliers, so it's aimed at the pharmaceutical excipient suppliers. It's been developed, designed, built, and now increasingly delivered by both suppliers and users of pharmaceutical excipients. So a good balance between the people who are using the product, the audit reports and the certificates, and those who are delivering it. As I mentioned, distribution comes in two flavors now, both good warehousing practices for simple excipients which are put in storage into a warehouse and then passed through, and one for distribution where it might be relabeled, repacked, for example. We also have core parts of the standard which cover the certification body quality system and how we qualify them in EXCiPACT, and then the auditor competency requirements, which are critical to ensure consistent and credible audits. It's all built on the ISO Quality Management System standards, ISO 9001, and follows the same processes, so most of the industry is very familiar with that and understands its strengths and weaknesses. The GMP, GDP, and GWP standards are all aligned and built on the corresponding IPEC guides, the Joint Good Manufacturing Practices Guide for Pharmaceutical Excipients, and the Good Distribution Practices Guide for Pharmaceutical Excipients from IPEC. They're freely available on the web if you want to go and get them. As a brief aside, it's not only about excipients that EXCiPACT can now be applied to. So I'm going to mention something which is new, which is called a pharmaceutical auxiliary material. And these are substances which are either in intimate contact during the manufacture of starting materials or the drug products. And they're removed before administration to the patient. The important thing is they're in intimate and one-to-one contact really with the starting materials. That could be a drug substance or an excipient or the drug product in itself, and then removed. So they're not actually administered to the patient. That's really important. And they can often have a terminal sterilization step. And they can be also, they could be processing agents used in the manufacture of these products and materials as well. And some examples there can include industrial gases, that nitrogen blanket that you've got, filter media, and other biotechnology substances which are used to culture cells and so on. All of those materials are PAMs. And as those materials are in intimate contact with the material which will be administered to the patient, even though they themselves don't get administered to the patient, they really have to be manufactured in accordance with GMP principles. And the manufacturers of these substances came to EXCiPACT and said, we like EXCiPACT and we see it's very powerful. Can we apply EXCiPACT to manufacture of pharmaceutical auxiliary materials? So we formed a team of people from users and suppliers of PAMs. And we looked at EXCiPACT and we came up with the answer, which is yes, under certain circumstances, if you do the formalized risk assessment for ascertaining GMP for excipients, but apply it to PAMs, then you could conclude EXCiPACT GMP for the manufacture of the PAMs is a good idea. And we know that people have gone away with that, and they're actually in the process of implementing EXCiPACT for the manufacture and distribution of PAMs now as well. So EXCiPACT is not just now about excipients, it also covers these substances which are crucial to the delivery of good quality drug products to patients. How do you apply EXCiPACT to excipient suppliers? Well, as I mentioned, it follows the ISO cycle. It's built on ISO 9001. And it sits alongside it, so it's an additional set of requirements to ISO 91. And you have to read the two standards together in order to understand the full requirements for EXCiPACT. The reason we've done it a separate document like that is we then don't have to buy a license from ISO to include all the clauses of ISO 9001 in EXCiPACT, and we can make the EXCiPACT standards free to deliver and share with industry. And it also means that excipient suppliers who have 9001 as their base quality management system can find it easy to implement GMP and EXCiPACT and integrate that fully into their systems without too much trouble. And as an example of how it works together, we've got something on, was not particularly GMP, but it was a nice short example on customer focus. So in the ISO 9001, we have 5.1.2, where top management shall demonstrate leadership and commitment. And then there's 3 bullets there, A, B, and C. And EXCiPACT has actually added and said, yep, that's great, but we also want you to do D, which is customer requirements related to GMP for pharmaceutical excipients are determined, understood, agreed with the customer, and met. So this is really important. You not only have to follow a good quality management system, you integrate GMP, so you have to listen to your customers, respond to what they're asking for, you understand that, and then you implement that in your quality and GMP systems and meet them and demonstrate you've met them. So there's a good example of how we've inserted GMP and GMP thinking into ISO 9001 and built a very holistic quality management system suitable for excipients and pharmaceutical auxiliary materials. Now, excipients are a very diverse bunch of substances. You know, they can be animal, mineral, vegetable derived. There's all sorts of different manufacturing technologies, including physics, biology, and chemistry involved. And what that means is a one-size-fits-all approach to excipient GMP just not going to be effective. A set of rules for the hazards arriving from one particular approach to making excipients is not going to be applicable to another excipient manufacturer who's got a different approach. So what EXCiPACT did was to use a risk-based approach to define the details of the GMP that they're going to apply in their quality management systems. And that's actually fully aligned with regulatory expectations as well, as we'll see. So suppliers, the challenge for you is to identify the risks of product quality posed by the way you manufacture or distribute your excipients, the operational environment, personnel, lubricants, water, process, all of gases, all of those kind of things which you see in standard GMP. All those hazards have to be evaluated, and you have to then determine the risk to excipient quality and take measures and controls to mitigate those risks. And what this means is that EXCiPACT GMP can be applied to many different manufacturing and delivery processes, and indeed, as we've discovered, to other materials which require a similar approach, such as PAMs. It makes it very adaptive and very focused. You do what is necessary, you do that well, you do that thoroughly, and then you're not then burdened with things that don't add value, that don't reduce risks, because you don't have the hazards present in your operations. So how can you use EXCiPACT to meet regulatory requirements? Let's take a look at it from the drug product manufacturer's side of things. Now, this rather wordy document, which I've mentioned previously from PICS, which is the Pharmaceutical Inspection Convention, that's like the club of all the inspectors around the world, of which FDA, of course, is a member, and here in the UK, so is the MHRA. Now, those parties do get together, and they are seeking harmonization and standardization of approaches, because they realize that drug products, excipients, APIs are all globalized, and having different standards around the world is not helpful. This is a very important document. It was originally published by the European Commission in March 2015 with a deadline for implementation the following year, and PICS adopted it as a guideline in 2018. And it requires drug product manufacturers to use a risk-based approach to ascertain the GMP required for their excipient. And what they need to do is to say, what is their excipient? What's its function? What's it doing? And how is it being administered to the patient? And then they have to couple that in. Who is the supplier? What's their quality performance? How well are they doing? And you fuse those two together. And you come out with a specification for the excipient and a specification for the excipient supplier, including what GMP they should be applying to the manufacture and distribution of their excipients. And this is a very powerful guideline because it gives the drug product manufacturer a lot of flexibility as well. And if that matches up with the excipient suppliers' GMP and quality management systems, we have a perfect fusion, and we can get on and make good commercial business and supply excipients, knowing that they're safe and appropriate for the use in that particular customer's application. So what GMP could be appropriate for an excipient? Well, there's a guide issued by the Parental Drug Association and IPEC, Technical Report 54.6, which actually goes through that risk assessment and gives some case studies. It's an excellent document, and it gives you lots of ways of how to implement it. And it actually suggests there could be of quality management systems. I hesitate always to say GMP on some of these, but it does say, well, maybe ISO 9001 is okay for certain substances in certain uses. And I'm sure those of you in the industry will know that there's a spectrum of acceptability that you could tolerate. Cosmetic ingredient, FC GMPs might be entirely appropriate for a topical application, for example. And food GMPs, as well implemented, are good for flavors and materials like that might be applicable in oral applications. And then we have more demanding requirements from IPEC, PQG, GMP, and EXCiPACT. And of course, ultimately, there's ICHQ7, or here in Europe, Part 2 GMP for drug substances and APIs. And if you want to go even further, then you can go into EU GMP Annex 1, which is for sterile materials. But there are not very many excipients in that category. What we find is that EXCiPACT GMP is really highly suitable for many low and medium risk applications. So having done your ascertaining GMP risk assessment, you can come out with high, medium, or low, and then EXCiPACT GMP really fits very well into the bulk of the low and medium risk applications you may have for your excipients. And is EXCiPACT certification acceptable? Well, the guidelines are quite explicit on this and pretty much says yes. It says, you know, if your supplier has certification of their quality system or GMP, and that matches up with what you've determined as is necessary, then that should be considered as such certification may fulfill the requirements. There's a little uncertainty there, and it may fulfill the requirements, but that's guidelines for you from the authorities. They'd want to study your risk assessment thoroughly, but in general, they've not objected to that. And I'm certainly been on the receiving end of the inspections in France, where the French regulatory authority asked me as an excipient supplier, are you implementing EXCiPACT? We said yes, and they pretty much audited us to that as well. So it can be acceptable. And of course, GDP can be applied to this as well. That's really quite important. But the key thing here is that you don't just qualify your supplier. You should also look at the certification scheme itself, at the certification body who's delivering the audits and the certificates, and qualify them as well if you're a drug product manufacturer. And another excellent guide from IPEC, the GMP certification scheme, and the certification body qualification guide contains templates which are available now from EXCiPACT itself, as the scheme owner, and from EXCiPACT certified companies. They will have the certification body template filled in with all the details showing how they conduct audits, how they're impartial, how they separate consulting from auditing and things like that. So that you can use those as part of your qualification of the EXCiPACT certification scheme. If you're not sure where to find those, then please get in contact and ask. And don't forget, to ask your suppliers as well to provide these with their audit reports and certificates. So that's how to use EXCiPACT from a drug product manufacturer's viewpoint, and how to insert it into part of your qualification process for pharmaceutical excipients. I just have a few words now about the differences between a standard and a guide. We've seen the example already in customer focus between those two. And a standard is something that it states explicitly what needs to be done and not how it should be done. And the main purpose here is that the standard allows an auditor to collect the evidence and determine conformance or not by comparing it to the requirements. It means the whole process is objective, and ultimately the aim is another trained auditor examining the same evidence reach the same conclusion. Whereas a guide means the auditor has to make a personal judgment in their opinion if there's conformance or not. And of course, this by definition is subjective, and the outcome varies from auditor to auditor. The guide predominantly is supposed to be both educational and set a standard. And as a result, it's compromised and can't do both with excellence. Separating them, and IPAC have done this very well with their new GMP guide. There's a lot of guidance in there. There's a lot of explanation of how to think about implementing GMP for excipients. And then EXCiPACT has written it all up alongside and aligned as a standard so that it can be audited objectively. An example here is in washing and toilet facilities in the IPAC guide. The latest editions just came out a couple of years ago, and it says adequate washing facilities. Well, who decides they're adequate? Is it me as the excipient manufacturer? Is it you as the auditor? Is it you as the customer? It's all rather subjective. So what EXCiPACT has done is says there shall be personnel washing facilities which ensure suitable hygiene standards can be maintained. So not only do you have to provide them, but the target is to ensure that you maintain hygiene. An auditor can come in and say, are there washing facilities? Are they available to the personnel? And are they in a clean, suitable state to provide hygienic standards? And you can assess that very quickly and objectively. So that's why we have EXCiPACT as a standard, and the way it's written differently to a guideline and a guide like IPAC. There's quite a lot sitting behind EXCiPACT certification to make sure that you can have confidence in the quality of the certification audits, because after all, it's a third-party audits certification process. There are third-party auditors involved, and they're not your auditors and your personnel going out. So EXCiPACT undertakes two vendor qualification of its own. So we mentioned at the start of today, you had to have a vendor qualification process, and EXCiPACT has it. It has one for the certification body and one for the auditor. So certification bodies who deliver EXCiPACT audits and certificates have to be accredited by national bodies, for example, in the USA, by ANAB, to provide ISO certificates, and they have to follow a standard specifically for certification bodies called ISO 17021. And we require them also to only use EXCiPACT qualified auditors to deliver EXCiPACT audits. Now, there's a legal agreement with them, which lasts every 3 years, and we then renew it. In that period of time, we will actually audit the certification body to make sure that they've implemented all the requirements that EXCiPACT places on them to deliver EXCiPACT audits around the world. And we have regular meetings with the certification bodies and at least annual reviews to identify improvements that we can take and things that have been happening around the world, how we can get more auditors maybe, or better delivery and better consistency. The current registered certification bodies are listed here. SGS, kindly hosting today's session for us, are there amongst others. So you can find EXCiPACT available from any of those certification bodies, and much will depend on the local auditor availability. We also oversee and qualify our auditors as well. Now, this is a personal qualification, so it's applied to the auditor as an individual, regardless of their employer. Some of them can be freelance or contractors working for certification bodies. Some of them can be employees of the certification body. However, their registration with EXCiPACT is independent at a personal level. They have to have lead auditor status with experience of ISO standards and ISO audits. They've got to attend a 2-day training course on EXCiPACT. The last one we held was in Brussels just a few weeks ago. And you have to pass the exam at the end of that training course. And it's a 3-hour exam. I should know because I attended that course a few weeks ago, and I had to sit the exam as well. It's tough. But that's good. That's what we need to have good quality auditors coming out and auditing these important substances. not only do you have to attend a training course and pass the exam, you also have to be witnessed performing an EXCiPACT audit by another EXCiPACT qualified auditor to make sure that you've applied what you've learned in the training course. There's a re-registration process every 3 years, and EXCiPACT offers continuing professional development, so refresher training every year for all EXCiPACT auditors. And we know that's been extremely well received by the community. We introduce what's new, like, for example, how to audit PAMs, but also the auditors are also asking themselves and each other lots of questions about experiences they've had. So, who requires EXCiPACT certification? And how does it assure the success of excipients and excipient delivery across industry? Pretty much all types of audits have been accepted by the regulatory authorities if they're used correctly as part of your vendor supply qualification process. EXCiPACT certification is not the beginning and the end of your vendor qualification process. It's just as part of it. It sits in the middle. It's a crucial part, but there are other things you've got to do to qualify your vendors. Don't forget those. Make sure you fit it in as part of an overall excipient supplier qualification program. For EXCiPACT, the full certification audit report has to be communicated to excipient users. That's the pharmaceutical companies by the certified supplier. Well, that's a rule in EXCiPACT, not just the certificate. You have the audit reports, you have the CAPA plans as well. And bear in mind that those audits can occur at a yearly frequency. So very important, and you can build a really big picture of your excipient supplier quickly. Don't forget to use the risk-based process to determine which kind of GMP you want. Hopefully you come up with EXCiPACT as there's what you need. That's brilliant. And the risk assessment process then allows for systematic and consistent decision tree aligned with the excipient supplier risks. Present that to the authorities during an inspection, and you won't be going far wrong, particularly if you mention the PICS document as the basis of your procedures. What do people say and feedback to us? Certainly helps to decrease audit frequency from customers. Lots of people don't come on site to spend a full day on site. They spend a little bit of time focused on a number of key elements which are really important for the excipient, and that avoids duplication of effort in addition. It's also very cost effective. People have fed back saying, yes, EXCiPACT does have a cost and an investment to put in place as an excipient supplier, but we easily get that back in the time we've saved and the confidence we've been able to give to our customers that we've got a credible GMP implemented across our operations. And it's not just those few people saying. What we've seen here is very much a steady and consistent growth of EXCiPACT certification holders worldwide, and there are now over 185. I'm sure we'll go through 200 in 2024, and you can see there's been a steady and consistent growth. Maybe a small blip there, in the growth due to COVID. But it's been consistent and steady, and we're finding more and more people adopting EXCiPACT as time goes on. So finally, to conclude, just how some reminders about how the process works and how you should use it. So remember, there's a legal agreement between EXCiPACT, the certification body. They then audit the excipient supplier and assign an auditor. That auditor is qualified by EXCiPACT, provides an audit report. It's the certification body that decides if the audit conditions satisfy the EXCiPACT requirements. It's not the auditor that makes the decision on certification. And then the excipient supplier shares the audit report and the certificate with the pharma manufacturer. As a pharma manufacturer, you need to just verify all of those details. You can authenticate the audit report. You can ask the certification body, has this audit report been adulterated or adapted in some way? And they should have a process to come back to you and say, yeah, that's our audit report, it's genuine. And you can check both the certification body, the audit, and the certificate are valid because they're all listed on EXCiPACT's website. Hopefully that explains EXCiPACT's advantages and its benefits. It certainly aims to minimize the risks, it reduces audit burden, and it makes the whole process of ascertaining and defining and then demonstrating that GMP, GDP, and GDP have been applied by your excipient suppliers. So thanks very much. That I think concludes my part of this process.
All right. Thank you very much, Ian. So my name is John Golick, and I'm going to take you through the rest of the slides here. But what does the certification process include? So when we look at the certification process from SGS being a certification body, we reach an agreement. You choose to do a pre-audit or not. Then we have the stage 1 audit, the stage 2 audit, and then we have the surveillance certification audits that occur. So in step A, accepting the SGS contract. So a proposal is submitted by SGS for your consideration. We make arrangements for you to discuss with the sales team and also with technical managers as needed to understand. And those quotes are valid for 60 days. The pre-audit, if you request it, would be step B. Step B, the pre-audit's an opportunity where we come in, we do a snapshot in time to help your company understand where they're at against the standard, to help prepare them, to prepare yourselves to be successful going through the certification process. At the stage 1 audit, the auditor will show up at your site with an agenda provided beforehand, and we come in and we're doing the stage 1 audit to review your documentation, make sure that you have all the documentation you need in place to pass the stage 2 audit. Then in the stage 2 audit, we're going to come on site and we're actually going to review and watch your operations occur. We're going to make sure that you have all the records that you need to say that you did what you said you were going to do, to show that you are compliant and making a good quality product. And then the ongoing surveillance audits. So we come back year 2 and year 3, and we review at a little, not quite as deep as an audit. We spend a little less time on site to verify that you are still in a state of compliance in order to provide your clients, your customers with an audit report on a yearly basis of what you're doing great and what you have repaired, what you fixed if needed. So as I said, it's a 3-year cycle. The 3-year cycle starts the initial year, you do stage 1, stage 2, then we do surveillance. The second year and the third year, we do another round of surveillance. And then in the 4th year, we start with another 3-year cycle with a renewal audit, which is another in-depth audit, followed by 2 more surveillance audits. So pre-audits allow the auditor to provide you with a list of critical and non-critical audit findings, things that could be stumbling blocks to your company from passing an audit and getting certified. At a pre-audit, the company does not have to respond to audit findings. The company has a chance to correct the issues without impacting the certification timeline. Very important on the certification timeline. So once we start with the stage 1 audit, you have 6 months from the time you finish your stage 1 audit to finish your stage 2 audit. If we stumble upon something in a stage 1 audit that would be critical to you passing the stage 2 audit, that could impact that 6-month window. If we find something that needs to be fixed and it's going to take your company more than 6 months to be able to have it ready to go, then that could impact you by having to start back over with another stage 1 audit. But again, on the stage 1 audit, we're coming in and we're looking at your documentation. pre-audit, we also look at your manufacturing facility and your receiving warehouse, your warehouses, receiving processes. We do a quick cursory look out on the floor to make sure there's no glaring GMP issues. But on the stage 1 audit, we're mostly focused on the documentation. Again, you get a list of critical and non-critical audit findings. You do not have to formally respond to these findings, but the company does have to correct the findings, because during the stage 2 audit, we're going to be reviewing how you corrected those issues and capturing that in the stage 2 report. So during the stage 2 audit, we have different types of audit findings that can occur. There's a life-threatening, where immediate action has to be taken. You have to submit the evidence within 3 days of how you're going to fix it. And then we have to verify it within 20 days before we can issue out your certification. If required, because of what we find, there maybe have to be a relevant regulatory authority under being notified of the issue that we found. And SGS will inform EXCiPACT of any life-threatening nonconformities that occur. We also have a critical during the initial audit. Here again, if you have a critical, we're looking for evidence in 14 days and verification in 28 days in order to limit the amount of impact on your certification process. Then we also have major nonconformities that can be found, where an action plan has to be completed and submitted within 7 days, and certification won't be granted until we've verified effectiveness. Verification will be either conducted on an on-site or a remote visit, and the evidence has to be completed before we issue your certificate. There again, if you get a life-threatening, a critical, or a major, it could impact your timeline of receiving your certificate. Now, if you receive a minor nonconformity, then SGS asks that you have the corrective action plan submitted in 7 days. The auditor reviews the corrective action plan. If it's found acceptable, then it does not impact your certification timeline to receive your certificate. So during a surveillance or renewal audit, if you have a life-threatening, is very similar. We have to turn around and fix these issues. And we may, again, have to notify a regulatory agency. And also, we do have to inform EXCiPACT. Your certificate will be suspended until you correct your life-threatening situation. If you have a critical, the certification will be temporarily suspended until we have evidence that the corrective action has been verified as effective, and we will take care of that as quickly as possible with you. If you have a major, your certificate will be suspended until we have evidence the corrective action has been verified. And if you have a minor, then we, same way we handle it during the initial certification, a corrective action plan be submitted, and if it's accepted, then we just continue moving forward with your certificate intact. So the goal is to have you prepared so that we're not finding majors, life-threatenings, and criticals during these audits through the training and the pre-audit program. So what are the common nonconformances that SGS sees when we go out to perform audits? One of the things that we see during the initial round of certification is failure of companies to implement a process for sharing the audit reports with their clients. It's one of the requirements straight out of the EXCiPACT standard that you have to share your audit report with your clients as part of the process. And you have to have a process for sharing those reports. Failure to have report redactions approved by the certification body. So you are allowed to request redactions on this report if there is some confidential information in the report that you don't want shared with your clients. You have to work with your certification body to get that approved. Failure to implement the required risk assessments. There are multiple risk assessments required throughout the EXCiPACT standard, and those risk assessments have to be in place, and then any reaction plans to the risk have to be addressed as part of the quality management system. And then one of the other issues we run into is because EXCiPACT is tied directly to 9001, Clause 4.1 and Clause 4.2, are the internal issues, the external issues, and need and expectations of interested parties. Most companies know these very well, but companies that are new to this type of certification normally fail to realize that you actually have to have these documented somewhere. That you have to review them on a periodic basis, and if you don't have them documented, how can you review them? One of the other issues we see is a failure to include the commitment to comply with the GMP requirements and the company's quality policies. Failure to implement quality objectives and plans to achieve them. Failure to implement overhead cleaning programs in packaging areas, secondary packaging areas, and warehouses. Failure in the United States to follow the FDA guidance on OOS investigation. And not capturing all of the management review requirements in the agenda and in the minutes of the management review. There are specific requirements for inputs and outputs of management review listed in ISO 9001 and also in the EXCiPACT Annex for management review. And all of the auditors are trained to pull open the standard and verify that your process includes hitting each one of those topics that are required in 9001 and EXCiPACT. So what is the best way to prepare for an EXCiPACT audit? One of the best ways is to receive training on the EXCiPACT requirements, ensure that you have internal auditors that are appropriately trained to conduct your internal audits, review other IPEC guidance documents that are out there, and the pre-audits. Those are all great opportunities to help prepare yourselves for certification. So the next thing I asked, now we're going to go back to the same question we asked earlier before Ian started going through his presentation. Now that you've learned more about what the value is with the EXCiPACT certification process, do you now see a better opportunity to be able to use the EXCiPACT certification audit reports to support your risk-based vendor certification program? So I'll give you guys a chance to respond here. Awesome. I'll also get you guys moving a little bit after sitting and listening. Actually get up, hit the clicker, and click on the answer. So my computer's showing about 23% of you have responded so far. We'll give it just a couple more seconds here, see if we can get a little better response. There we go. Now we're over 50%. Much better. All right. Thank you all for responding. So now we have 71% of you saying yes, this potentially could be. We have 14% of you still on the other side of the fence. And we got 14% of you still sitting on the fence, not sure which way to go. Our job here is to show you the value of audits, of the EXCiPACT certification process, and show you the value of how it can help reduce for a pharmaceutical company the cost of the vendor certification program and the processes involved. So again, thank you. Thank you for joining us. But if you want more information, we have a YouTube channel with additional training webinars and live recordings. And you can go to YouTube at SGS North America or scan to subscribe. But again, thank you. If you have any questions, and at this time, I'd like to open up the floor to Q&A. So if you have any questions for Ian or myself, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A chat box, and we'd be happy to have Ian, hopefully, or myself answer the question for you.
Okay.
And John, you're the MC.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thanks very much, John, for that. That's a great illustration of how SGS implement it. One of the things I'd mention, life-threatening. Why on earth did we come up with life-threatening as a non-conformity type? Surely critical, major, minor is enough. Well, the answer to that question was because the FDA asked us to. They wanted to know if we found a situation where an excipient was doing harm to patients, so it was harm, it wasn't a risk, it was actual harm, that they got notified. So that's why we've included that particular category in the way it's been phrased the way it has. And that's one of the reasons why the agencies like the FDA are comfortable with EXCiPACT being used correctly as part of your vendor qualification process. The other comment you made, John, was brilliant, is about interested parties. And the most important interested party you can list in your quality management and GMP system is not your customer. It's the patient, right? If you get that as your interested party and one of your critical components, then the rest of your quality management system and your GMP systems will have a brilliant focus. And they'll be doing the right things for the right reasons. And your customers will be delighted that you're doing that, and you'll be successful as a result, I'm certain. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ian. Well, if there aren't any questions, I just want to say thank you to everybody.
There was one Q&A from...
Did I miss something? Go ahead, please.
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
We have one.
Amy, you asked if some suppliers telling them that SGS told them is not to share the audit reports, and that's not true. It's an explicit requirement in EXCiPACT now that you have to have a mechanism to share your audit reports with your customers. This is the only way we can have good confidence that your GMP has been properly implemented and audited annually, and therefore in full conformance with EXCiPACT. So you have to share your audit reports with your customers.
And also, all of our auditors that go through the training through the EXCiPACT organization know that the audit reports have to be shared. The SGS auditors are trained internally also to ensure that they know that they should be shared. So if you have a specific on that, Amy, please email me and I will correct my auditors wherever they are around the world, because that is definitely not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody?
There's another question that came in from Anna, and it says, you mentioned that EXCiPACT GMP is suitable for medium risk application. Can you please give an example of such an application? So I'm going to kick that over to Ian.
Thank you. Nice question, Anna. Yeah, I mean, it depends how you do the formalized risk assessment, but typically you might say a low risk scenario would be a topical or maybe an oral application. And for me, then a medium risk application might be maybe topical, say on unbroken skin. It could be perhaps inhalation or ophthalmic, for example. It depends how you put it into your risk assessment, where you draw the boundaries, but you have to decide those. I have seen situations whereby an excipient destined for use in a parenteral application, which you might think is high risk, they actually concluded that EXCiPACT GMP was more than suitable for what they needed. A lot depends on the technology used to make the excipient, and a lot really depends on how you then treat and manufacture your own drug product. So, yeah, EXCiPACT's very suitable often for those kind of medium risk applications. Definitely oral, some parenterals definitely as well. Great question.
Yes, it was.
Very
I don't
good. One of the
see
things that we
any
saw,
further
John,
questions coming through.
just real quick, one of the things that we saw, John, at the conference at Bioprocess last week in San Diego was there were a lot of vendors that actually had an ISO 13485 for their product, but it included a media that did not have a certification on its reagent or the media that they were using in their laboratory equipment. And I wondered if you could speak to that very briefly, just talking about, how there's a need for certification for that media too.
All right. Well, so
Yeah, I
in the
mean,
bio,
this is very much where pharmaceutical auxiliary materials came from.
go ahead, Ian.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. Yeah, very much in the bioprocessing area, there seems to be a gap. I think this is a great example of where technology has got ahead of the regulators and our regulatory thinking. We've gone ahead and we've created all these fantastic drug products made using biotechnology, but some of the old GMP rules that we wrote in the 1970s really don't fit. What do you do? Well, this is where something like a risk-based approach, which is central to EXCiPACT's approach, is very suitable. And with the patient as your major interested party, you can determine what it is that you need to do to have high-quality product that's going to protect the patient and deliver high-quality pharmaceutical drug product.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, if there are no more questions, we really want to say thank you for your attendance today. A lot of times people want to have a one-on-one conversation over a webinar or a conference call and talk about their specific program, and sometimes they'd like to get a quote. Maybe it's for pre-audit, certification, or training, or all, or just some of that. And if you find yourself in that group, please feel free to contact us or me, John Armstrong. I'll put it all together and get all the necessary stakeholders and resources available to help. But again, we thank you so much for your time and wish you a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.